Welcome, everyone, to A Mexican and Redneck Follow the World. We are your hosts and surrogate fathers, Juan and Ben. Today we'll be discussing a continuation of Who is Juan and Ben?
Part 2.
Man, I really enjoyed that last podcast. Man.
I know.
I feel like I got to know you a little bit better. So that was really, really fun. And like your background and the influence of, what was the guy you say you influenced you?
Ken.
Yeah.
He was one of the greatest people I'll ever know.
That's so awesome.
I can make that statement this early in life.
Yeah, that's good.
He's amazing.
Good. That's good. Man, that is amazing when you have those influences in your life where they just impact you. You know, and you know that, wow, I'm never going to be the same because of this person coming into my life. There is a standard of excellence that has been brought into my life, and I've seen it, I've experienced it, I've tasted it, and I want that.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and I feel like, even for me personally, I've had that taste. Which you're telling that story, and I was like, wow, I've kind of experienced that. That's...
Yeah. So tell us about your background.
Well,
where were you born? How'd you grow up?
My name is Juan. Well, actually, my full name, I'm not going to say it.
Juan's great.
Yeah, Juan's great.
We love Juan.
I'm not going to say all 32 of my names because then, the government's probably listening to me. He'll be able to track me. No. So I was actually born in Mexico, but I was raised here in the States.
Okay.
I came to the States when I was just a baby. Little fun fact. In my family, I'm the oldest of 6, small Hispanic family of 6.
Okay.
And then out of all my siblings, I'm the only one that was actually born in Mexico. The rest of my siblings were born here in the States. So in my family, I guess, of my brothers and sisters, I'm the true Mexican. They're all just posers. Which is kind of funny. But anyways, growing up, I actually grew up in Southern California. We grew up in a small town, McFarland, which is, fun fact, growing up, it's literally it's a gas station town. Like, the only reason you stop there is for gas.
Okay.
But apparently, I think like Disney made a movie about it, McFarland, USA, which it put it on the map. My family and I, we moved from California to Tennessee in 2000. So I grew up in the public school system. I wasn't private school or anything like that, but my mom was a stay-at-home mom. Which, it's funny, you were talking about your mom being at home and all that stuff. And I remember as a kid, my mom was one of the few moms that was actually a stay-at-home mom. Because typically, like, all within the Hispanic community at that time, I remember, like, both parents would work. They would work the fields, and then the kids were kind of, like, off on their own. But my mom was a stay-at-home mom, and I was always that kid that got in trouble. Like, because my mom was there. And it's like, but then, like, my friends, like, all my friends that, like, their parents would be working, they would get home from school, and they had, like, all this free time, and I always thought, like, oh, my gosh, that's so cool. It's like, you get to do whatever you want, and then they just buy you whatever you want. That's awesome. And, like, we didn't have, like, we were poor. We weren't poor, I guess, but it was, like, we never lacked food, and then we never truly, like, went hungry, but it wasn't, like, there wasn't an abundance,
Sure, sure.
It was like, okay, we're making it. But then in my family, one thing is like there's a lot of abuse. My dad had a little bit of a drinking problem, and by little he liked to drink a lot. And then he would get lost for several days and come home and be like, "Oh, hey, where's my meal? I've been gone for 3 days, and I come home and there's not a meal ready for me. Kind of that kind of stuff. So, for me, I had this.
Wow.
As being the oldest of my family, I kind of had this experience. I was like, oh, well, my dad is doing this. That's not the right way of doing things. I don't want that.
So you identified there was a little bit of an issue at a young age.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was my thing. And then, like, with us doing the podcast, like, my goal is, like, just want to encourage men out there and be like, hey, there's a better way of doing things. So, and I don't know, this is kind of a weird thought, or weird thing that I used to do as a kid. So when I was a little kid, going through those traumatic moments, I would picture myself time traveling from the future to the past, to my past self. And I would literally, like, sit there and I would say, man, I wish that my future self could come back into the past and just tell me, it's going to be okay. You're going to make it. And then now that I'm here...
Your future self just said it.
Well, yeah, I find myself like... I think about that, and I think about that, and I think about that little kid, and I do think about that, and I'm like, and I'm telling him, you know, it is going to be okay.
Yeah.
You are going to make it. So it's like, whenever I experience hardship now, I think about my older self now. That grandpa, it's like, hey, coming back, it's like, you know what? It's going to be okay. You're going to make it.
Oh, yeah.
You know, but you know, it's funny, man. You were talking about that gentleman that you had in the experience, and I had a very similar experience with that. When I was in my late teens, early 20s, I remember getting invited over to a friend's house and just experiencing that, like, man, this is what a father is. But then I like to call him my white dad, Larry.
Oh, yeah.
He's my godfather. He's an amazing guy. This was the guy that opened his home up to me, invited me, let me come over. You know, I went on family vacations with them, stuff like that, and it just completely changed my life as far as like what a good dad was. I remember this one time we were going to go on a family vacation with them, and we get there late night, and everybody's packing. And he has two sons, you know, my good friends, and then we're hanging out. Well, it's like they're all like the boys are like having a good time. They're taking shots, you know, getting ready for the vacation, stuff like that. And then Larry's in the garage packing, loading up the van, doing all this stuff, doing all the work. But there's this joy in him. It's like he's a good dad.
Oh, yeah.
He's not angry at his sons because they're in the kitchen getting drunk, getting ready for vacation. It's like there's a joy of like, man, I'm providing this for my kids.
Yeah.
Like I'm giving them a relief. We're able to escape and go and just have fun. I had never experienced that bit. And I remember going on that family vacation. I was like, is this what a family vacation is supposed to be like? It means you actually have fun. It's not where you're just yelling and screaming and telling and then going to see relatives that you really don't care to see. Because that was my experience of family vacations. It was like, oh, we're going to go see these people for the weekend. I'm like, oh, it's gonna be so boring. So that was kind of like my experience with that, and I was like, oh man, and like growing up, and now that I have kids, I'm like, oh man, I want to be able to share that, and then just be and even kind of with you, like I was very similar in the sense that being a big brother, I've always had the sense of responsibility of like, if I can avoid my younger brothers from going through what I went, then I'm willing to do it.
Yeah. I observed that when I remember being like 11 or 12, and our family dynamic was really starting to fall apart. And I really had to step up. And my sister and dad both said this to me in observation, that I took on a fatherly role to her, taking care of her, helping her, not just with like after school with making sure she got off the bus, got a snack, that kind of stuff, or if she was sick, you know, taking care of her. But even like an emotional thing, like hanging out with her, spending time with her. And so like throughout the summers, I can remember being like 12 years old and like kind of have to hang out with her because my dad was driving a truck, or 13, however old I was, but like my dad was driving a truck. My mom had to work all day. So it was like I was at home. I was like, okay, what do you want for breakfast? What do you want for lunch? You know, let's go outside and do something. And there's a 6-year split between her and I. And so if I was 13, she was, 7?
Oh, wow.
And so, like, I'm having to play father to the 7-year-old at the age of 12 and 13. Which I think in the olden days, that was kind of more common.
Yeah.
But for our society now, it's not as common.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, I didn't realize that. Yeah, between me and my sister, there's a 6-year split. She's the second oldest, and I'm the oldest. But then my brothers, there's a huge split. So, like, I kind of became that for them as well, where I became...
Shout out to my sister.
Big brother, and then kind of like helping out. Because I remember even myself doing that. Like a lot of times I would kind of cook some of the meals. A little fun fact, we just had Father's Day, and my wife actually made a dish. It was like, it was a Father's Day, it was what is it? Fettuccine Alfredo with like shrimp.
Oh, man.
But that was like one of my favorite dishes, and I always, like growing up, that's what I would cook for my family. I love making that fettuccine Alfredo, and like, man, I would go all out.
Did you have like wheat pasta, or did you have zoodles?
No, we had the pasta. We went all out. Yeah, like by this time when I was, and especially this time when I would do it, I was working, making a little bit of income, so we would go all out. We would get like the fancy stuff. It wasn't like it was not a cheap meal. Yeah, it was really, really cool. But then she made that for me, and then I remember many times making that, and then even in my life, in a way, I almost kind of became that barrier, the protector between them and my dad, because there was a period in my life when my dad was very, very abusive, and just just bad influences, and just kind of and like looking back, I feel like I understand him a lot more, especially with some of the topics that we're going to go deal in with this podcast, as far as like how do you pursue your dreams without feeling like you're dying inside? How do you chase after your family, but then not ignore your passion?
Oh yeah.
And I think for him, looking back, I was like, man, there wasn't that balance of like, this is what I'm passionate about, this is what I want to do, but I want to bring my family along with it. And looking back, I feel like a lot of the ways, it's almost like we got in the way of his passion. We got in the way of him being able to do the things that he wanted to do. He loves horses, loves animals, and I think now it's become a very healthy outlet for him, as now that he's I mean, a little, gets older, man. He's not that old though. He had me when he was like 21, so it's kind of crazy. He's only 20 years older than I am, but at that age, when he was in his 30s, like mid 30s, like I am now, it's like I see that. I was like, man, dude, if you could have, and I think like if you could have involved us more with that, if you could have like made it a part, because there were some moments. I remember there were some moments where we were actually doing it with him, and there were some good moments where I was like involved with his hobbies, and we had this really cool moment. Man, I remember this one time. It's so majestic, Ben. It's like he loved horses, and we were out there. He was breaking a couple horses in, and I went with him, and we saddled up these horses, and him and I were riding together, and we're literally like riding into the sunset. And like he's on his horse, I'm on my horse, and the horse are just galloping, and it's like this picturesque moment. And I remember thinking in that moment, I was like, this is awesome. This is what life should be.
Oh yeah.
Me riding next to my dad, enjoying each other's company.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, I still think about that moment, which I need to tell him about that, how much I enjoy that moment, because there were some bad moments, but there's been some definitely good moments, and there's definitely been a healing process in our family, as far as when we moved from California to Tennessee, that really helped my dad change and become a better person, become a better father, become a better provider. And I think too, one of the things that kind of helped him a little bit was him and I actually had an altercation at one point where he came home. He was pretty drunk.
Yeah.
And then I remember I stayed up that night, and I'm making him dinner. Well, then he decides to go take it on my mom, because like that was her job, and say like, oh, here's my boy staying up and making me dinner instead of you're just in bed. And it's like 2:00 in the morning. Like, what do you expect her to do? Like, well, he expected her to be up and make dinner for her. And I remember jumping in there, like he grabs me, pushes me, throws me against the wall, and it was that moment, like that moment where I was like, this is where I make my stand.
How old were you?
I was probably like 13, 14, probably about that, about 14.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I remember like, and I was like, and it was this moment, Ben, where I was just like, I told him, I was like, look, you're able to push me today, you're able to throw me against the wall today, but I'm only going to get bigger, I'm only going to get stronger, and you're going to get older, and I'm coming after you.
Oh.
And he broke down, and I was so angry. There was such a rage, but it was a defining moment in my life where it wasn't idle words. What I told him, it was a promise. Like I told him, this, I'm gonna get you, and I'm gonna wait until I'm strong enough to just beat the crap out of you.
But up until that point, that's what you had been trained, like that abuse that happened, and you realize, oh, I know right from wrong.
Yeah.
And so my destiny as a man, for the little world you had at 14, was, okay, now I'm because 14-year-olds is when they start realizing, oh, I'm a man.
Yeah.
I need to take care of my family, good or bad. And you're like, I know right from wrong, and this is how I take care of my family.
Yeah, and I knew like that situation was wrong. And it's funny because like even that solidified my decision at that age, where I was like, I knew I wanted to grow up to be a badass. And I remember seeing like the Marine Corps, commercials and stuff like that, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be a Marine. So
Those guys are
Yeah.
really amazing.
So that's when I decided I'm gonna join the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
And that's another story going into, but it just impacted my life at that point. But then there was definitely that changing, and there's been a grace. And my relationship with my dad now, it's at this point is cordial. We're friendly with each other. I love him. I care for him, and I think in a lot of ways I am proud of him because he's actually done things to improve himself.
Oh, that's awesome.
To where he's not that person anymore.
Oh, good
that
for him.
promise that I made to him at 14 years old, I'm so grateful that I did not have to actually keep.
Yeah.
That's a promise that I broke, which I'm great. I'm grateful for that. I'm so grateful that I had to break that promise because that's as far as I look back at now with me having a son, the thought of him telling me what I told my dad terrifies me.
Oh yeah,
You
but
know?
you know the reality is your dad did know you well enough, is what I'm hearing. Like he knew you, not that he understood your words, but he knew who you were, and he's like, well, if Juan says this, he's gonna follow through. He's not a liar, and he's getting bigger, he's getting stronger, and he knew that when you put your mind to something, you will follow through and pursue it.
Mm-hmm.
And like your dad was there with you and did observe you some to know I've got to change my ways because I know this kid, he's growing up and he means business when he says he's going to do something.
Mm.
And that's what I'm hearing is your dad knew you and was like, man, this guy, and he probably admired you even at that age and was like, this guy's calling me out. Like he saw the maturity in you. And it's like, this guy's calling me out on the floor. He's saying, this is what it is. And I can't lie to myself or be naive or whatever anymore. I have to accept that this is wrong. He's telling me the truth. And yeah, you might have thought you were a 14-year-old standing up to your dad, but what he saw was truth from another man, even from a 14-year-old's mouth. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I hadn't really thought about it like that, but I think you're right.
But he just because they're 14 doesn't mean they're wrong. It just means they're little and not as experienced yet. That's all.
Yeah, which it makes me realize that coming of age moment.
Oh yeah.
It's I think there. And I think a lot of guys out there will probably agree with this as far as like we all experience that coming of age moment of like, oh, this is the day that I became a man or started walking into that role of manhood.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Well, we thank you for listening to a Mexican and a redneck father of the world. We love you and we're proud of you.